said that's the most insidious disease in our culture. Relativism. Any finite system is contingent, is relative, but relative to what or to whom is the point. Not whether it's relative. Of course it's relative, it's finite, but to what, to whom. And that's where the Christian locks horns with postmodern sociology, knowledge piercing, theology, or anything else. So don't forget, no one in the Semitic world, no one in the Greco-Roman world, no one up to the scientific revolution in the Christian West ever questioned Genesis 1:1. Because they knew that everybody's worldview was pantheistic, and matter was eternal, and history was cyclical, so history wasn't going anyplace. If it just keeps rising and falling, well, you know, that's not what the Bible says. So we can't just preach to Jesus coming again. We've got to find out what kind of a world makes that feasible. What kind of a world makes the question? I want to know what questions people ask. I want to know why they ask it. Because an idiot can ask a question 10 wise men can't answer. Just asking a question, that might be precocious, but that, are you interested or just want to trip? I think it was someone came to Jesus one time trying to trip him, but they were trying to trip up the wrong one. They got hold of the wrong baby. He said, "No, which one?" He said, "No, what's the law say?" You know, he answered the question by a question. Well, that's not Socratic. No. Well, anyway, it's about Jesus. It's about the gospel. It's about preaching the gospel to a world that progressively is angry and hostile with that. And we're talking about the West, but most people do not live in the West. Asia, the fastest growing church in the world is in China. The second fastest growing church in the world is Eastern Europe. Not in America. America's got a cafeteria of theology. You can pick and choose how you feel about it, and who has the best donuts, and who has the best Swanette group in the band, and who has the best dancing girls and things like that. And but I'm not coming because all these people are ugly. I'm not coming back to that. Because I come for entertainment. I said, well, then go to a ball game. Don't come to church. Churches change the world, not to reflect it. Amen. Say that again before you fall asleep. The church does not exist to reflect the world and seek a friendly mode of the mega church, but it is to engage the world. Engage the world to its very foundation. Postmodernism, the postmodern evangelicals and so-called, they're neither neo-evangelicals nor neo-conservative, but they talk like that. They claim that we no longer can believe in foundationalism. But I say I want to ground the foundationalism in the creation of the universe, not in Descartes, nor in life. This is a total myth. Most of these people, not all of them, most of them are bright enough to know better than that. I think if you did a brain scan, that you'd find horizontal on both hemispheres in a lot of those people. You know what that means. Whether you do or not, that's what you'd find. Well, what does this have to do with standing again in Mars Hill? Now that's 2,000 years ago. Now one of the things, the postmodern in media and music and education, these are the three most powerful shaping forces in our culture. Not the church, but media, education, outweigh the influence, because a person has to go to school, theoretically, they hate every minute of it, but they have to go to school, preschool, you know that? Well, then when you find out what they're taught, you read their curriculum. See, I quit reading the state's curriculum and education. It was mindless. But the people that write those things, their cousins are in presses, and they write books, so they got to sell them to somebody. I want to know what's taught. Now, how many pictures? You got too many words on that. How many PowerPoints you got? No, I don't care about that. So could I give you an assignment to look at the educational books in your state? Look at required by the Credit Association. I worry about, unless Harvard just got accredited, Harvard's not accredited. But who on earth would have the gall or the think that they ought to ask them to be accredited. They're so good nobody asks them. That's where I'd like our brotherhood to be. So good nobody asks. We're not there yet. But that's, if I live another 10 or 15 minutes, I'll hope that our brotherhood gets to the point that nobody asks. They know that it's top light, you're aware of everything. And that's what it is to glorify Jesus Christ in this world. What is it? Education, media, and the two most powerful, and I mean by that how much money is spent. Lobbies in Washington, you've heard of Washington, D.C.? You know what that is. Very bad. Repressed it as soon as I mention it. Right there. The two most powerful lobbies in Washington are the homosexual and, well, I'm going to give you three. Education and the labor forces. You know anything about any of those? And when I say powerful, I mean how much money they spend to get legislation. And that's what my wife, notice how, because she's preciously, I just love this piece. She forbids me to even think of buying gasoline from what?
Shell.
You know why? Now don't everybody talk to wise. They give more money, it's like Disney. We don't go to Disney. Oh, that's entertaining, no question about that. Disney gives more money to the homosexuals in Washington, D.C. lobby situation than any phenomenon in the United States. We don't go. Oh, they don't ask me to go. And I couldn't make a down payment on the wheelbarrow, so they're not thinking they're going to get a lot of money from me. But we don't go in principle. Today, many times people say, well, it's not the school, it's the principal thing. We operate on principle, but principle is not a postmodern category. See, because no one's ever seen a principle. They don't know of it. And the square circle, I think I've seen some square circles down some road. I know some. I'll not mention it because you're not up to it. Well, look at the conditions. We'll talk about this. And then we're going to see from Paul what we might learn to be a witness for Jesus Christ in the 21st century. See, I didn't create the world. The world created complexity. It completed diversity. But all diversity isn't right or wrong, but some diversity is right or wrong. Diversity, we don't have to be clones or all look alike if God created everybody look alike. Men or women or dogs or cats. If everybody looks alike, well, you know what kind of a world that'd be. The only way to have a world like we got is just a world that was created. Well, the world's not very big, the earth. And another practical thing, we'll talk tomorrow. If you can come back, if you can't come back, we'll talk about it. Immanuel Kant, you've heard of him? He's one of your favorite preachers, isn't he? Okay. Immanuel Kant, his perspectivism was one of the greatest minds, still is. But he was trying to fuse rationalism and empiricism because he knew that science was too powerful to ignore. He tried to fuse it. And have you heard, anybody, you have, no, have you heard of Kantian perspectivalism? Anybody ever mentioned that to your worship? Nobody had? Perspectivalism, everybody has a perspective. See, flies on the Sistine Chapel have a perspective, but they don't see. Paganini was doing one of the great works, so he's, you know who he was. And one by one, the strings on his Stradivarius broke. And in one string, he never missed a note. He had perspective. He knew what he was doing. He didn't know what he was doing. Like me, he just walked on the launch and said, well, what are you doing with this $1 million thing? It's junk. Must have got it from Sears or Walmart or something like that, down in Taiwan. See, that's perspective. Perspective, Kantian's perspectivism. The only reason we didn't get the relativism of the postmodern mind in Kant He absolutized Newtonian mechanics, science, Newtonian mechanics, not negotiable. And he absolutized Euclidean geometry, not negotiable. And he absolutized Aristotelian logic, not negotiable. That kept him from the relativism that we've got. But you see, in the next 150 years, Newton was not refuted by Einstein, but he was modified. Aristotle was not refuted in two-value, all propositions either right or wrong, and now that there's all kinds